Greatest Hits Radio, that's Saltwater, a hit for tonight's special guest back in 1991. Such a beautiful song. Clearly, songwriting something that might well run in his family. The current album is called Jude, but music is not the only string to his bow by a long stretch. Philanthropy is a huge part of his life since founding the non-profit organisation, the White Feather Foundation, 15 years ago, which focuses on projects around conservation, clean water, education and Indigenous cultures. What a pleasure to welcome Julian Lennon. How are you, Julian?
I'm alive.
Which is better than the alternative.
Is it? I don't know. Okay, all right. No, I've actually, I'm quite. I keep saying that I'm jet lagged, and then I keep thinking that I'm actually more kind of life lagged. Really, well, that's my new one.
I think you probably speak for a lot of people. That's a great way to put it. Life lagged. Life just feels relentless, and not necessarily in a good way. Last couple of years, right? It just seems to be
absolutely
like lots of people post pandemic. You've made some changes in your life. One of which was to claim the name Jude and make it the title of your current album. Obviously alluding to the Beatles song that was written for and about you by Paul McCartney. And that seems to be a kind of statement that you're no longer trying to outrun the shadow cast by your dad, but rather turning to face it and own it. So how big a part has that played in your own mental health and well-being?
Well, I feel I'm pretty privileged. I've been through the mill in my own way. We all do. Have difficult paths to go through for the majority of, well, at times in our life anyway. Listen, we're very fortunate to be where we are. There's a lot of people that want to come together that understand that and respect the position we're in, and that we need to keep that ideal of peace and positivity moving forward.
Let's talk about finding that peace and positivity in your own life, because as you quite rightly said, we all go through our own personal mill in life in some way, shape or form. For you, the sporadic nature of your relationship with your dad, and of course losing him in such awful circumstances when you were so young, not to mention that tussle between being publicly forever connected to him whilst trying to assert yourself as your own person. How much did the emotional roller coaster of that personal history play into the decision to just bite the bullet and call the new album Jude?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like shedding a skin in many respects. I really wanted to take ownership of the name Jude because I am Jude. And, there's been a lot of changes, especially with the pandemic again. There's been looking in the mirror, quite deeply this time around. I just decided I was also very, very sick and tired of being seen as the second John, so to speak. So I just wanted, and everybody from day one always called me Julian, or Jules, or Jude. And I just wanted to be me after all these years.
And in addition to claiming the name Jude, there's a name that you wanted to knock down the pecking order a bit, as you've just touched on there. Let's continue with that conversation right after we play the song that Paul McCartney wrote for and about you. This is Hey Jude.
Hey Jude.
Hey Jude by the Beatles. That was a number one hit in the UK in 1968, when tonight's special guest on The Great Conversation, Julian Lennon, would have been about 5 years old. Of course, Paul McCartney went to visit Julian and his mum shortly after John Lennon had left them both, and wrote the song Hey Jude for Julian by way of trying to comfort him. And you are, Julian, now at the age of 60, finally sort of owning that for the first time, in a sense, by deciding to call your album Jude. But there's, in contrast, another name that you're keener to distance yourself from, right? And that's your birth name.
I decided in 2020 to change my name. because my name legally used to be John Charles Julian Lennon. I'd always wanted to change it, but it was about facing your fears of finding some bravery within to do that, because I respected Mum and I respected Dad in the names that they gave me, you know. So luckily, you know, I was fortunate that it was John and Julian. So it was John Charles Julian Lennon, and I just switched the Julian and the John to Julian Charles John Lennon.
I mean, what a metaphor.
That was like shedding a skin. That really was. You know, there was some weight off my shoulders. There was a relief to it, to finally be me, to be Julian,
and to put Julian first.
Yes, well, this is this is very yes, finally. Well, in my own life, in my own world, but you know, and also that being Julian, Jules is the nickname that I'm most called by friends and family, and hence, hey Jules, Jude. It just made sense to me. There was a lot going on with all the Beatles and the Get Back thing, so that was on my mind too.
I think that was such a simple but hugely significant thing to do for yourself, Julian. I applaud you for that. So your first name is now legally Julian, not John, and the new album is called Jude. Let's play the latest single from it now. This is Love Don't Let Me Down. That's Love Don't Let Me Down by Julian Lennon, the latest single from his current album called Jude. And we will be back to continue our great conversation with Julian Charles John Lennon, aka Jude, next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where it's just you, me, and our special guest, Julian Lennon, cozying on in for a great conversation. Julian has a current album out called Jude. He's also the founder of the non-profit White Feather Foundation, which he's very passionate about. And well, as we want to do here on the great conversation, Julian, I want to go back way back to get into your musical influences, out with the blindingly obvious. Let's start with the question we put to all our musician guests to test out your memory. Would you remember the first single you ever bought with your own money as a kid?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, Black Betty Bamalam.
Oh, wow.
That's the first 45 I remember buying. Yes, absolutely.
Number 7 in 1977 for Ram Jam with Black Betty, the first single ever bought by our special guest tonight, Julian Lennon. I'm interested to hear about the music you grew up listening to, because after all, as a kid growing up in the UK, your dad wasn't around. You lived with just your mum, who was trying to give you as normal a childhood as possible. So what sorts of things would you have been hearing, you know, from her?
As far as Mum's musical influence, she used to have a restaurant in North Wales called Oliver's. Right. And myself and my best friend Justin, who co-produced the album, we used to work as waiters in there.
Were you any good at that?
We helped ourselves to the bar a little too much and spilled soup a few too many times, and then was fired, and rightly so. But the music that was played at that point in time, which is what Mum played at home as well, were very much stuff like Fleetwood Mac's. Don't say that you love me. Steely Dan, right. Of course, the Pretenders, so though I took on those as bands that I would listen to.
Reelin' in the Years from 1972 by Steely Dan, a favourite of Julian Lennon's mum that influenced him in his younger years. So when did you start to learn how to play music yourself, Julian?
Through Steely Dan and bands like that, I fell in love. Probably my my all-time favorite, not a band, but is Keith Jarrett, the Clone Concert.
Right.
Because when I started playing piano, Mum bought me my first ever piano in my early teens, and it's an old upright Steinway jazz one. And I used to start writing on the piano these instrumental 20-minute pieces that I would lock in my head and never recorded anything.
Wow.
And it was only after that fact that I had a few friends listen and goes, and they would all say, well, this is all very well and good, but this isn't good. You're not going to get this on the radio. And I was thinking, all right, this means I have to chop down 20-minute instrumental ideas into 3 to 5 minute songs. How do I do that? And that was partly the beginning of my journey outside of the basics of a 3 or 4 chord acoustic guitar. But the piano was a different thing. It gave me a different landscape, so it was a different world. But anyway, that's a long enough answer, I think.
What about the influence of seeing live performances around that time? Do you remember the very first live gig that you went to?
The first gig I ever went to as a teenager was AC/DC. With the original Bon Scott. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
A whole group of us in our teens were bikers, and all leather jackets, long hair, all that kind of stuff, and tents on the back of our shoulders, and we'd go down to gigs. But that was one of them. And then the other one that I remember after that was on the eve of my O levels, and I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't supposed to go out, but I snuck out the window and went to see, of all bands, Rush. I was heavily into the Led Zepps and the heavy stuff at that point in time. So I went to see Rush, got to the front row. I don't know what time I got home, but I remember arriving at school going, what exam are we doing today? And as you could tell, my interest was high in academics.
How did that O-level turn out?
Well, none of them turned out very well at all because I had no interest.
The spirit of radio, a hit for Rush in 1980 when a 17-year-old Julian Lennon was sneaking out of his house to go and see them live, much to the detriment of the following day's O-levels. And we'll be back to continue our great conversation with Julian Lennon next. Too Late for Goodbyes, the debut hit single that got to number 6 in 1984 for tonight's special guest on our great conversation, Julian Lennon. What was that experience like for you, becoming a pop star in your own right?
Well, the thing was, I never considered myself, and still don't now, a performer. I just don't. I can get up and sing a few numbers, but I've seen obviously videos of me running around like a headless chicken with the first world tour and stuff like that. But I don't feel that now. I just feel differently. You
would have found yourself in amongst some pretty impressive peers back then. If you didn't really consider yourself to be a performer, who did you respect as a live artist?
I guess, one of the other concerts I went to in my youth was Prince, and I saw what a show he would put on, and I'm going, I'm just not thinking that I'm that guy, but the other person that I probably most admired out of everybody was Bowie. Right. I just thought his artistic capability, where he went with everything that he did was so magical, so incredible. And I was fortunate enough to meet him on a number of occasions, and we, in fact, strangely, shared some of the same band members. My bass player and my drummer were his as well.
Wow.
So I used to follow him when I was a biker in London. I used to follow him round. He was on a tour called the Glass Spider Tour, and I would follow them around Europe for the most of the tour. So, I've enjoyed moments like that.
Loving the Alien, a hit in 1985 when Julian Lennon was following David Bowie around Europe on a motorbike with his mates and sharing drummers with him too. But that level of success, as we've touched on, that kind of massive fame and focus on you as a musician, that just wasn't something you particularly aspired to.
I never thought that that's who I'd become or be in any way, shape or form, because again, after mentioning the other work that I've done.
Yes, for your non-profit White Feather Foundation.
Yeah, it's not always been about music for me. I love writing and recording music organically when it comes together and it's right. But I have so many other interests that, I want to keep all of that going. But it's much more behind the scenes than being that performer on stage, So I'm even questioning, whether I'm going to make that move to get out there and go on tour again or not.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if you had any plans to tour the album. Not sure yet.
I came up with a concept about 20 years ago that I did a show in Hong Kong as part of a festival, and it was with the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra. And that's when I got goosebumps, was playing with a live orchestra and just a piano, but also the full band too. Yeah. And I thought, if I ever do this again, and I have any control over it, then that's what I do. The idea, in brief, would be to play limited engagements around the world, but it would be on behalf of the White Feather Foundation, and we try and find the worst problems in each city that we play and try to help them through that, but also do it as a competition through radio and TV to get local artists to be part of a competition that the winner would have the foyer of the places that we're playing to show their art, so that many people can see the artwork too. But again, these would likely be performing arts theatres, so not necessarily bigger places. But I would certainly want to work with either, a partial or full orchestra, and make it just not a run around or rock performance per se, but just, I want to do something beautiful and something different.
Well, talking of beautiful and different, let's talk about your recording of Imagine, a song, Julian, you said you would never record unless it was literally the end of the world, but you did agree to do it in aid of the Stand Up for Ukraine campaign, which I know that song has raised millions for that cause. But even with that, knowing that you were doing it for such an important cause, did you have much trepidation around recording one of your dad's most iconic songs?
Here's the weird thing. I was releasing the first song in 11 years, Every Little Moment and Freedom, 2 songs, in fact, on the Friday, which was my birthday. So that had been in place for a long time. That whole concept, birthday, and we were also releasing Imagine on the Friday on my birthday while I'm trying to release and I'm going, okay, well, listen, my stuff can take a backseat yet again. It's okay, and we had to focus on Imagine, of course, and but I was happy to do that. And again, at the end of the day, seeing that in fact that we had raised all together, and knowing this was going out to the world. I tell you what, though, my fear was I was keeping very low key. I've been doing a lot of work behind the camera, behind the scenes. And I thought, this is going to really screw things up for me, because if the video goes out worldwide, and it was on most news networks that I know of, I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to walk down the street. It's going to be hell again. Not again, but I have to say, the weird thing is, it's been the complete opposite. People have left me alone. It's like been this weird kind of, I'll get the odd comment where people say you did a great job and I'll just be like, wow. Because I love to go to the supermarket. I love to go shopping. I love all the daily activities of life.
You love your own life, having your own autonomy.
Yeah, but I cook. I want to pick up the vegetables that I'm going to be cooking and eating. You know, it's that simple. I enjoy that. And I've seen so many people in the limelight that they can't even step out their door anymore. And I would hate that. I would really, truly, truly hate that. And so I thought this was really going to be, you know, a turning point and a difficult one, but for the right reasons. So that's why I said, okay, I'm going to go with this. But weirdly, it's been the complete opposite. And and again, I've never had so much respect for doing something in my life.
Imagine there's no heaven, we'll live as one.
Isn't that beautiful? Julian Lennon's version of his dad's classic Imagine in aid of those affected by the conflict in Ukraine. Julian Charles John Lennon, it has been it's been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you.
And I wish you nothing but the best. And thanks for all that you do with your White Feather Foundation and with this song, trying to help people, standing up for Ukraine. I think it's admirable.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a real, real pleasure. Thank you.
Julian Lennon, what a lovely guy.